We don't know yet.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot of stuff.
Good morning and welcome to the Planning Board regular meeting on Thursday, December 12, 2019 at 9:30 a.m. If you've not already done so, please silence your cell phones. Deputy Town Clerk, please call the roll.
Member Mendelson,
Here.
Member DeMoss,
Present.
Member Goldenberg,
Present.
Member Adwar, Member Bowden is absent, Vice Chairperson Kravitz.
Here.
Chairperson Axelrod.
Here.
Town Attorney Rubin.
Here.
Thank you.
Will all rise, please, for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do any members have any additions or deletions to the agenda? If there are none, I call for motion to accept the agenda as presented.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
At this time, all those giving testimony, please, in the following subjects, please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in.
By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Okay, we'll now go to public comments. All public comments will be limited to 5 minutes each. Please, if it's related to the subjects that are going to be presented under new business, please wait at that time, and you will have the option to speak at that time. Are there any other public comments to be made at this time? Okay, we need to approve the minutes of October 10th, 2019, and the minutes of November 14th, 2019.
I'll make that motion, we approve it as stated.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Old business, there is none, so we will move on to new business. The first new business, 9A, is a proposed ordinance allowing accessory marine facilities. An ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 30, Zoning Code, Section 30-68, Supplemental District Regulations to allow accessory marine structures to remain on property after a principal structure has been demolished or removed, providing for conditions, conflict, providing for severability and codifications, and providing an effective date. I refer this item to the town planner emeritus.
Morning. Okay, so this is a proposed ordinance to address docks that individual property owners would like to keep remain if they're in good shape after the house is demolished. And currently, when a demolition permit is issued by the town for a principal structure, that is a house, the applicant's also required to remove all accessory structures, including the docks, since they are accessory to the principal structure. And by definition, an accessory structure can only be permitted as accessory to a principal structure. So recently, the town received requests from property owners that intend to build a new structure on a lot where the demolition has occurred to keep the existing dock on the lot. And on July 30th, 2019, the Town Commission discussed the option of what the circumstances would be in order for the dock to remain after the principal structure is demolished. At that meeting, the Town Commission directed staff to prepare regulations that would permit the docks to remain. Staff analyzed the situation and prepared regulation with conditions that we've included in the memo and the ordinance before you. The conditions that we believe could be considered are accessory marine facilities may be allowed to remain on property where a principal structure has been demolished or removed if the following conditions are met. A, at the time the demolition permit is issued, the town's building official certifies after inspection that the accessory marine structure is structurally sound. B, the property owner certifies that he/she will be applying for a building permit to construct a new principal structure within 1 year following the demolition of the principal structure. C, within 60 days after the demolition of the principal structure, the entire property is tilled and landscaped with sod or other appropriate material as determined by the building official. D, within 60 days after demolition of the principal structure, the entire property is fenced with a 6-foot chain link fence with scrim screening. And E, no parking will be allowed on the property, and at least 2 no trespassing signs must be mounted to the chain link fence surrounding the property. The exception timeframes would be if the property owner does not apply for a building permit to construct a new principal structure within 1 year following the demolition of the principal structure, then the accessory marine structure must be demolished or removed within 60 days of the expiration of the 1-year deadline, unless the town manager extends the date for good cause showing. In no event may the town manager extend the time frame for applying for a building permit to construct a new principal structure beyond 180 days. And 3, a certificate of occupancy. In no event may an accessory marine structure remain on the property if a new principal structure has not been constructed and a certificate of occupancy has not been issued within 4 years of the date the principal structure was demolished or removed. That is the entire body of the proposed ordinance, so we're available for any questions.
One thing I want to understand, that basically this has been looked at by the commission, correct? And is passed on to us for review and recommendations?
What we had done, we had given them a memo with all of
Okay.
these items included in it, and they had seen that and told us to go draft regulations.
Okay. Questions? Eileen?
So my first question is this?
Microphone.
Mike,
Mike?
Is it transferable? So I go demolish my structure, I have my accessory use, and then I sell it to you. Do I sell it to you with that in place? The new guy gets the same ability to, the
I would-
time periods, when do they start, how do they work?
I would say yes, and I would say that it would have to comply with all these timeframes. If we need to include that if you transfer the property, that those timeframes still exist, we can do that.
Okay, from the date of the first time?
Principal structure
Like,
demolished.
not from the date of transfer,
No.
from the, okay.
No.
So, that would be one thing I'd want to clarify. However, it still makes me a little queasy that if it gets transferred, there's a 4-year period from once they comply with the year of getting the permit, that it can still say there are 3 more years without anything being finished, and they can pass it on to somebody else. That, I think that could be, you know, I mean, as a lawyer, I can sit here and speculate all kinds of things that could happen, but I think it's too long of a time period.
Well, we have houses in Highland Beach, which it's almost the norm now, that they go well beyond 2 years for construction, up to 3 years. So we had thought the 4-year time frame at least would be appropriate. We can shorten it, but we do have a lot of houses that are being built, even now, that go even beyond 3 years.
Okay, well, see, my worry is that someone will find ways to abuse this system. You know, like the regular guy who wanted to keep his dock and wanted to build a house and did all this, you know, within 4 years is one thing. If the new guy comes in and he has like a different agenda, you know, I'm wondering if you could put some more guidelines in to, you know, maybe say that they have to apply for the permit within a year and then they have to start it within a certain amount of time, so that at least we know that someone is there building a house as opposed to trying to use the system to do something else, which I can't really think of right now, but.
We could put in that they have to start within a certain amount of time from the time they receive a building permit.
Okay, those would be my comments.
Brian?
Are chain link fences necessary?
Well, we've considered that with the parking issues the town's having, especially with construction, is that to keep other contractors or contractors from parking on the property, which we have occur now, that the chain link fence with the screening would help. It's not, we don't have to do it, but right now we have the problem of people parking on lots that are not built on yet, that do not have any fencing.
Okay. The other thing is, I know we're going to be talking about this property pretty soon, 4205 Intercoastal. They have a dock on the back of their property, which needs fixing dramatically. How would that be
Well,
in
we
this
have,
proposal?
right now, that the dock that you're proposing to remain has to be inspected by our building official. And then if it's in any kind of disrepair, you would not be able to get this approval from the town.
Fair enough.
Eric?
Enforcement. How are we going to enforce this?
Well, we'd have to keep a record of who receives this demolition, which we have.
Yeah, I'm not
keep
putting you
records.
against the wall, but my main concern is enforcement, and in fact, on everything we pass. How are we going to enforce this if, let's say, the one property we're going to be talking about, their dock is in disrepair? What happens, and we have to demand that they take it down? How is that going to be enforced?
We have code enforcement, and they would cite them and give them a violation. There would be a certain amount of time to either repair it, to bring it to code, or take it to the code enforcement board to
Yeah.
have them demolish it.
Fundamentally, I have no issue with that. If the dock is in, and say the lift is in good shape once it's inspected, I think that would be a reasonable thing. I just want to make sure that, you know, that it doesn't slip through the cracks like, as we talked about earlier before the meeting, water puddling on the highway, that, you know, it is definitely enforced.
Any other comments? Michael?
I have a couple of questions for you, Mary. As always, I'm concerned with unintended consequences and zoning ordinances that become somewhat heavy-handed. So if I purchase a house or a property that has a house and it has a dock on it, and the house is old, but the dock's been rebuilt, and there are dolphin pilings or whatever you call them in a boat lift, and they're relatively new, and I knock the house down, and my intention is to have drawings made and to build a house. And a recession hits, like the Great Recession that we had 10 or 15 years ago. And it takes 7, 8 years for my business to recover, and I can't get the house built. Yet I have $150,000 worth of dock, pilings, lifts, whatever these things cost, sitting there, that after a year or 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, it has to be torn out. That just seems to me to be an overreach by the authority having jurisdiction, and that it could be an unintended consequence. If the lift and the dock and the boat dock, whatever you call those things, the piles, are structurally sound, are not an eyesore, not unsafe, and the property is grassed, and a fence is put around the property, and you have the fabric scrims on it, which I don't have an issue with, because I think it keeps vagrants and people from dumping on it also. I don't see any reason why the dock and the lift couldn't remain as long as it was maintained and kept in good condition and not used as a rental dock. Can you address that?
Well, right now, even if your dock is in good condition, it's an accessory use. And when you get a demolition permit for a principal structure, everything has to go. So that's the way it is right now. There's no exception for keeping it. So this ordinance actually allows for individuals to keep the dock for a certain amount of time. And right now, they don't have that ability. Even if it's in great shape, it's still an accessory use that would have to go.
But they could apply for a variance to that, I would imagine, if they wanted to keep it currently. They could apply to keep it as an exception, perhaps, even though it would be a non-conforming use under the zoning ordinance?
Well, first of all, it's not a hardship, so
Well,
it wouldn't qualify with variance criteria.
But knocking down $150,000 worth of viable improvements could be considered a hardship, no?
No, it wouldn't
A
be.
hardship can't be financial, and I'm not sure you can get a variance because it would be a use variance, and you
Right,
can't grant use
get a variance
variances.
for a use.
And plus, yeah, purely financial doesn't qualify.
So we have a defective ordinance now, and if we're going to rewrite it, I just think it would make sense to rewrite it in a manner that would be fair with unintended consequences. That's the only
Well,
comment
we
I
could
have.
think about it some more and see what kind of language we may be able to add to address that situation. Maybe the town manager could give more of an exception for something like that. So we'll look at that and see what kind of language we can add to address it.
Thank you.
Harry? No comments?
Can I add
Eric,
something?
yeah.
My concern is that, Michael, that if you say, well, you know, I'm having a hardship with, my business is down and I got to do it, but now, do I need a CO, certificate of occupancy, to put my boat on it for the next 4 years and still use it? And I think that would be wrong. I think that's the concern I have, is that there'll be a beautiful dock and lift there, and I want to use it all this time, even though I don't have an approved, you know, a certificate of occupancy to use the property. And that would be my concern, that all of a sudden, let alone a rental dock, it would be that, you know, I own the property, I want to use the dock. I don't have an issue with a good structure being left with the intention of building within, as you say, the 4 years, because that forces someone to move ahead.
Right.
Now, if construction, because of a recession and the building is half done, that's a different story, but you can't use a dock unless the
Well-
property is improved.
For one thing, you wouldn't be able to park there.
Right.
There'd be no place to
Yeah,
park, so.
unless you
I
have a
know.
neighbor or something, but, you know.
Well, that's right, but that's outside the
Right.
scope of what we can
One thing,
control. But
Eileen will
you
make a
couldn't
comment.
park there, and if somebody was renting it, well, they'd be in violation of the town's code, because you can't rent your dock. But the renter, even if they went under the, you know.
Well, even if it was an owner, you know,
Right,
even
there's
if,
no place for them to
Yeah.
park, so that's the problem with that.
I have a quick question. Now, there was an ownership that was actually just, they split into the unity of title. And now we have one area where there is a dock. Now, has that dock been demolished, or has that been discussed at all?
Well, if it's under a unity of title,
No, the unity of title was broken, if you recall correctly. The unity of title was broken. I don't remember the
house-
address,
the
but
house across-
38,
no.
whatever,
all right, I can't remember what.
Yeah, I
property it
remember.
was, right.
Zach, but there was a unity of title, they went back and forth, they agreed to separate, the request was to separate the unity of title, it was. Now, on that space, originally, there was some discussion that he was going to build something. There now is not a discussion, that was not agreed to, and he now stands, that dock is standing there on
With
this
a lift.
situation.
I
With a
think
lift.
when the
So,
unity is taken to the town commission to request release.
That was done.
No,
Oh,
I'm
good.
saying that when that
Yeah.
happens for whatever property it is, then they would then have to either demolish the dock or have it inspected per this ordinance, and then have a one-year timeframe.
Eileen?
Okay, so I would be in favor of this if you come back and tighten it up a little bit as we discussed. I would not be in favor of it if it was endless, open-ended. First of all, I don't think you can't monitor if someone's renting it out or not. And second of all, I don't care about the, it's as Mary said, right now, you can't have it at all. We're changing it to give you a reasonable time period. I would not be in favor of an open-ended, that you could leave the dock forever and not build the house.
Michael?
I think that it should not be open-ended. However, I think that if you have a 4-year period on it, maybe have one option of a second 4-year period. After that, it has to go away. There should be something that I think is not quite as restrictive. Again, you're fixing a defective ordinance. Let's try to fix it so that the new ordinance is really workable. Also, Mary, do you know what other local cities have in their ordinance for docks and structures? Because to be honest with you, I don't do a lot of residential work, but in years past, when I did, especially down in Fort Lauderdale and Pompano, there's a lot of lots that were demolished with houses on them where the docks were in good shape, and they remained unconstructed because the property didn't sell or whatever for 10, 12, 15 years. The lots were grassed, and they weren't obscene to look at. They weren't bad to look at. It was a nice-looking open field, and the docks were structurally sound with no issue.
Well, as far as I know, and we are not unique, an accessory to a principal structure is the same everywhere. And legitimately, it should probably have been demolished. Whether they have a separate code, which I'm not familiar with, to address keeping it, they may. But to my knowledge, there aren't any codes that I know of that allow you to keep an accessory structure.
Mary, at
Our
this
attorney might
time,
know.
Yeah,
Very-
no, because North Palm Beach does.
Okay.
I was-
And it's sort of as Mr. Kravitz was saying, they allow it to remain, it has to be landscaped, empty, but they do allow the dock to remain. But it is the exception rather than the rule.
Okay.
I
I'm going
agree
to
with
take a
you.
chance at this time to introduce our new planner, Ingrid Allen, and ask her, with her experience in Boca, have you ever come up with this situation? Let's get you involved.
I may not be able to contribute too much. Well, good morning, everyone. My name is Ingrid Allen, and I am the new town planner.
Welcome.
I've been here, thank you. I've been here just over 2 weeks, so very short period of time. So I did review this item. I will say, I did, my last job was with the city of Boca Raton. I was a senior planner there for 6 years. I really didn't deal much at all, really not at all with docks. This was truly a building permit issue. I was dealing mostly with current development and comprehensive long-range type development. So I didn't really deal too much with single-family homes. Every once in a while, when we had a proposed home or a duplex east of the coastal construction control line, then I would review those plans for a single-family home. But yeah, I really can't say too much. I don't have too much expertise. I'm obviously reading the code and learning a little bit of learning what you have in the code with regards to these accessory marine structures. So I can't really contribute too much. But like I said, I'm familiarizing myself with the code, and if this comes back to you, I'll obviously be a little bit more familiar, but I really can't contribute.
Okay.
I'm just really learning and listening at this point.
Eileen, I was going to ask
Yeah,
public comment.
it seems to me that where we are is that a couple of us have asked Mary if, certain changes could be made, and I think what we need to do now is let the planning department revise the proposed language the way, with taking into account these comments, and then at the next meeting, I'm sure we would all look at it, if it was too long for me, I probably would have a problem. If it was too short for you, it would probably have a problem. But I think we need to see the revised language.
Okay. At this time, if there's no more comments from the, I will open it for public comments. Evelyn?
Evelyn David, 4740 South Ocean. Point of order for you, David.
Okay.
The property you were talking about,
Right.
you were right part of the way.
Okay.
It was unified with one lot. That unification was broken, and then it was unified with another lot.
Oh, okay.
So it is legal.
Okay.
So that's not a
All right.
problem.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Rich?
Rick Greenwald, Tranquility Drive. I think in general, this makes a lot of sense. There isn't much point to me in tearing down perfectly good structures just to tear them down. There needs to be some time limits, as you've discussed. But my main comment really relates to something that I think was not addressed in the ordinance. And that's what happens if the accessory structure is physically sound, was legally put in at the time it was put in, but with subsequent changes in codes and zoning, probably would not be approved at present. Namely, it's too close to a property line compared to what some of the changes in 9B that is going to be considered later today, or the structure is too large, or there's something else that doesn't comply with current codes, but it's a perfectly good structure. And to me, while it's still a compromise, still more liberal than before, where everything had to be torn down, it probably, if it is not in compliance with current codes, even if it's structurally sound, it would seem to me that we might use that as an opportunity to get any new structure in compliance with current codes at the time that the new dwelling is going up. Thank you.
Doug?
Good morning. Doug Hillman, 4748 South Ocean. I go back to the unintended consequences that Michael brings up numerous times, and I totally agree with it. But if you back up for a second, if there is a vacant lot that is appropriately landscaped, and one would need to define what appropriate is, and there is a lovely dock that is in good order, it is maintained properly, what's wrong with that? Why does one have to build a home on it? Why do we have that requirement? What's wrong with a dock on a lot that doesn't have a house? We have, 3 miles of canals in our town? So we are a boating community. What's the sudden requirement to have to build homes there? I shouldn't say sudden. We've always had that requirement. My question is, why do we have that requirement? I'm just backing up for a second, thinking, what's wrong with having lovely lots with docks? And it then becomes, what's the definition of a lovely lot? And I don't mean a vacant lot with a chain fence that has some grass on it. It would have to be appropriately landscaped, that it fits into the community. What's the problem with that? If there are nice trees on it, nice landscaping on it, and a dock. So, something to think about. Thanks.
Any other comments? I guess we need a motion. Does anybody want to make a motion
Yeah,
on the subject?
I'll make a motion that we table this until the planning staff has come back to us with some changes to the language to take into some of the comments of today.
I'll second that.
Anybody have any
Yes.
other comments on this? Good, Michael.
Yeah, as a quick discussion, those were really good points, and something that I had forgotten about is that under the South Florida Building Code, when a building or property is being renovated or modified, if 50% of the aggregate area of that structure is modified within any 24-month period, the entire structure must be brought up to code. I don't remember how that affects accessory structures, but I believe it does, because if you're going to build a new house on that property, you're going to have to raise the property, raise the seawall to meet FEMA guidelines, and that may mean that the dock has to come up as well. So I think there is a vehicle by which everything on the property would have to be corrected, including drainage, landscaping, so on and so forth. So I don't think that's an issue. I was also thinking about the issue with the chain link fence. If I was the neighbor next door, even if it has the fabric green or whatever, someone can put a big picture of your future house on it. But I've also seen communities whereby they require some posts to be put in every 8 feet with a little piece of chain hanging across it, something that looks nice, that keeps cars from being able to park on the lot. I think that a chain link fence, 6 feet tall, 5 feet tall, 8 feet tall, whatever it happens to be, is something that I wouldn't want next door to me for any extended period of time. I realize that today's my last day on the board as I'm leaving the town, so my opinions may not be all that valid, but I think it's always better from a wisdom point of view to be open and flexible. Thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a few. First of all, I think that if we can get some community input on what kind of border or protection they want for the lots, that would be very helpful. And second of all, I think what we're trying to do is try to do the right thing and not be too restrictive in terms of if there is a dock and a lift in compliance, not to have it be abused, because obviously, unfortunately, we have to make rules like in every condo, because somebody will definitely try to step out of the bounds. So I think that what we're trying to do, and with Mary's input, and Mary, our town planner emeritus, is try to do the right thing. But as Eileen says, let's go back and try to clean it up a bit.
Any other comments? We're past actually public comments, I'm sorry. What do you call it? We'll take a roll call vote?
Member Mendelson?
Yes.
Member DeMoss?
Yes.
Member Goldenberg?
Yes.
Member Adwar?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Kravitz,
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Then let's go on to the next thing, if I can find my paper there. Is 9B. It's the proposed ordinance giving planning board final authority on marine issues. An ordinance of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances, Chapter 6, Building and Structures, Article 5, Seawalls, Bulkheads, Retaining Walls, and amending Chapter 30, Zoning Code, Article 4, Zoning Districts, to allow the planning board to make final decisions concerning granting approvals for seawalls, bulkheads, retaining walls, and various marine facilities, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict, and providing for severability and codification of providing an effective date. Mary?
Okay. Currently, there are various processes in the code pertaining to the review and approval of marine facilities. The various processes have caused confusion for both applicants and staff, and I could definitely certify to that. Some go to the planning board for final approval, some go to the planning board for advisory to the town commission, and some go directly to the town commission. So on July 30th, 2019, the town commission discussed this issue and directed staff to prepare regulations that simplified the process for approval of marine facilities. So staff prepared regulations that would simplify the approval process for all marine facilities such as docks, boat lift, bulkheads, and seawalls. Application for marine facilities approval would be processed as special exception, that is, with notice and advertising, with final approval by the planning board. The special exception process requires that applicants be advertised for public hearing and public notices be mailed to property owners within 500 feet with final approval by the planning board. And we attached the minutes from the July 30th Town Commission meeting, and staff, of course, is giving you this ordinance for review and recommendation, and I'm available for any questions.
Okay. I'll start the other end. Harry, any comments or questions? Michael?
None at this time.
Eileen?
No.
Brian?
Mary, on page 5, it has to do with section 6, 128, the B part there. Seawall west of A1A shall be in excess of plus 6 feet.
Right, that exists in our current code right now.
Pardon me?
That exists in our current code now.
So basically, water level, the seawall will be 6 feet above the normal level of the water. Is that correct?
Something to that effect, yes.
Who determines that? I mean, who
The building
enforces
official.
that?
The building official.
Okay. I walk a lot and I go down like into Bellito, and you go across that bridge and you see on a high tide day, you see the water above the seawall.
Right, that's everywhere. It's down across the street from where I live too.
So is 6 feet reasonable?
That may have to be addressed in the near future, because FEMA is putting out their new maps. So I think with the new maps, it'll have to change.
I think so.
Brian,
Yeah.
I'm going to interrupt you and call point of order, basically, that basically the discussion here is approval of this thing, not, we all agree on what you're bringing up, but I think it's not for discussion at this
Okay.
point in time.
Fair enough.
Eric, do you have any comments?
I think we've discussed in ad nauseum, and I think that we just go ahead and approve this.
My comment basically is, I've watched the commission, we discussed this subject, then we have to pass it on to the commission, that brings it up. I definitely think this is a long time in coming, and I definitely
Yeah.
approve. Are there any public comments to be made? Rick?
Rick Greenwald, Tranquility Drive. First of all, I applaud everybody for tackling this. I mean, this whole issue has been kind of the wild, wild west around here for a long time. So I applaud all these efforts. I also applaud all you guys for actually plowing through these things, because when I read through it, I have a few questions really that I wanted to address today. There have been some changes, and I'm not clear about how enforcement, or some of them, I'm not really clear what the changes mean. So one of them was regard setbacks of boats, which it used to be, we used to say, well, your boat can be docked and it can be up to the property line. Basically, your boat shouldn't protrude past your property line. The recommendation here is that, or the new ordinance would be that it can only extend up to 10 feet to your property line. Well, I get that, and makes some sense, certainly, but everybody has to understand that that will limit the size of boats that can be on a given property. So the boats would be 20 feet smaller theoretically than they are today. I'm not saying whether that's good or bad, it's just everybody should understand that before these are approved. And along with that, who enforces that, obviously? Is that going to be a neighbor complaint, has to turn you in? I know for sure it's not enforced now at all, because as was said, you can walk around and you see violations all the time. So again, that's to be considered. I had questions about, further on in the document, perpendicular docking, which currently is not allowed, would be allowed by special consideration. What wasn't clear to me was the length of the vessels we're talking about, whether this applies to smaller things such as personal watercraft, kayaks, paddle boards, things like that that are currently in fairly significant usage and are often docked perpendicularly to seawalls. Finally, as we move on to 7, section HD, it says that all mooring facilities shall require a building permit. And my question there is, what about things such as floating docks, floating lifts, structures which, as technology has improved, have become into much, much wider usage? We see these all the time now, both for significant-sized boats, but also for smaller things. Again, personal watercraft, paddle boards, kayaks, canoes, etc. Currently, as I understand it, these structures do not require a permit. In other words, somebody at this juncture, and again, you can see them all over town, and certainly in Boca Raton, they're really all over the place when you drive down the Intracoastal waterway. These are typically, plastic, PVC attached to the seawall, extending out a little bit. They're removable as opposed to the concrete pilings that you see. So they're removable. They have not required permits in the past. Is that going to continue to be the case, or existing ones going to be grandfathered in when houses sell, as I tried to talk about under 9A? There are a lot of questions in here. This is a complicated document. I applaud everybody for working on it. I'm not sure that it's been gone through carefully enough such that the, forget what the legal terms are, but the least sophisticated consumer can really understand what's going on here when looking at this ordinance. Thank you.
David, I have a point of clarification. Do I understand that this change is only dealing with us working on certain things as opposed to the first or finally, as opposed to the commission and going back and forth, okay? Correct. So the issues that you've brought up, correct me if I'm wrong, are issues that were always in the code and aren't changing now. We're not voting to change anything or to leave anything alone. All we're doing is changing who gets to decide under what's in the current code, and therefore that our decision will be final. And to change the code, we'd have to go and change the code.
The change to, there is a change to the mooring. The 10-foot is new.
We included a setback for boats to be 10 foot from the property line, because for one thing, we receive a lot of complaints from people, where people are bringing in 50-foot boats, really huge boats, and close to the property line where people in the adjacent house can't see anything but a boat. So we included the 10-foot setback. It's not going, you could still probably have, if you have an 80-foot lot, which is typical of a waterfront lot, and then you take off 10 feet, 20 feet, you're left with 60 feet. That's still a pretty big-sized boat to have.
So are we voting on that?
My question is,
here.
so my question is that appropriate for us to be doing in this?
Yes.
In this ordinance?
Definitely.
Okay, I'm just.
Because it sounds like we're changing code.
We are changing the code.
We're changing the
But
code.
this ordinance changes.
Is that the
ordinance
only
changes the
place
code.
we're changing the code itself?
Oh, well, the process was
Other than
changed.
process.
As opposed to the process?
Yes.
Okay.
Because I was under the same impression that basically this was just changing our ability
The
then,
process.
that there was
Right,
not.
because right now it's so convoluted
Okay.
that it's difficult for even professionals to
So,
straighten out.
I think that before we vote on this, we all have to decide whether or not we want to be voting on something that includes a change to the 10-foot. What was it before?
It was no setback from
No
the property
setbacks,
line,
okay.
but
Property line
that's when the
extended.
town was for probably 25, 30 years.
It was the Wild
and
West
now-
era.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm not saying it's a bad or a good idea. I'm just saying that from our point of view, I think we need to understand that we are making this substantive changes.
Right, and it's the town
in
commission.
addition to the
The town commission will make the final recommendation on accepting everything.
Okay.
But yes, that's included in here.
Okay.
On the basis of this, does anybody else want to make a comment regarding? Okay, then somebody.
Yeah, I'll make
Yeah,
comment.
go
I think that the setback is a reasonable thing. I think that if you own a property and someone puts a boat right up to the property line and it's, 30 feet high or 3 or 4 decks high, you're interfering with someone's, lifestyle. Second of all, perpendicular docks, if it's a hazard to navigation, then it can't be done anyway. I appreciate, Fred, what you're saying. I'm sorry. Rick, I appreciate what you're saying, but there has to be some restrictions to hazards of navigation, and that would actually come from the state.
Right.
Or
The Army Corps and the
Yeah.
DEP. Right.
So I'm pleased with the way it is laid out right now, and I'd definitely vote for it.
Any other comments, Michael?
Yeah, Mary, how does this affect Mr. and Mrs. Boater, who has a boat that currently exceeds the 10-foot setback? Once this ordinance is passed, are they grandfathered as long as that boat is there? What happens? Do they have to
right.
sell their boat?
Right now, they would be a non-conforming to the setbacks. And when they changed, they'd have to comply with the code. Unless the commission decides they want it to be enforced on everyone and gives them a certain amount of time to comply with it, which commissions can do that if they so choose.
Now, based upon, let's say this is a hardship in the sense that there's can they request a variance to
No,
allow
well,
them
they
to?
can
if they have
always
a-
request
No,
a
if they have a
variance.
boat that is currently not within the code and you pass this code, the question is, do they have to sell their boat?
No, it would be a non-conforming to the setback.
Okay,
And until they changed,
okay.
then they would have to comply with the
Okay,
code.
when they change.
Unless the town commission decides they want everybody to comply with this within a certain amount of time, which they can do, but then the whole town has to be noticed multiple times that this is the law. I mean, that you could do to any law. You make it enforceable after a certain amount of time. However, we're not recommending that.
Get Eric?
I'm sorry, I'm a bit confused. I am. I thought this is to give us the final vote.
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
It is, but this has to go to the commission
For them to
approval.
final say, yes,
Yes.
it's okay. So they can, when it comes back, they can say that the folks that are quote-unquote will be non-conforming after this is passed can be grandfathered in.
They would be.
Okay, that's why I want to make sure that it's not an
That's the
undue.
way it's written, that they, there's
Fine,
no
okay,
restriction.
thank you.
I'd like to ask the board attorney what his opinion is on the non-conforming use of the boat. If the boat is, I guess, titled or documented to that person, how do we know how long the boat's been there? It opens a bunch of consequences that I think.
I was, when we were discussing, I was thinking, how would they document? I mean, I guess they could show ownership of the boat before the effective date of the ordinance. They'd have to show that if it's a non-conforming vessel. But I do understand your concern. It could be a little tough to administer.
So would it be?
Well, most codes are very difficult.
Yeah,
to
well, that's true,
administer,
Would it
especially
be
on
wise
private property.
to place a non-conforming use exception that says that if the boat, but again, how do we know, if the boat is documented, for example, in the Marshall Islands, how do we know how long that boat has been at that dock here? Was it just moved last week? You really have no way to enforce that.
Well, we have code enforcement, and it's difficult for any violation on private property. That's difficult to see anyway. The only way that we know about some violations that you can't see from the street is that somebody calls and alerts us, which is one of the best ways for code enforcement, because as soon as somebody brings a boat in right up to the property line, most likely the neighbor is going to call the town and
Yeah.
talk about it.
And when it's documented, it's dated, I mean, whether it's docked down at the Boca Hotel or it's brought up here, if they own it, they own it.
Now, my real question is, I think that, like Eileen, a lot of us thought we were just voting on us accepting thing. I'm wondering, should we split this other subject off into a separate issue and to be brought up? I don't know how much this was discussed by the commission regarding this 10-foot thing or like that. But if it hasn't been really discussed, I mean, it seems to be there are questions that are arising this was like added on to our just accepting the vote. And I'm wondering,
Right, we can
should
split
be-
it off,
should
but I'll
we
tell you, the
cut it off
reason we
like that?
included it was because we have so many complaints from people who can no longer see things, and are having difficulty selling their property because someone comes, it's advertised as waterfront, they come out to the property, they're like, we can't even see anything. So that's why we included it. We can split it and bring it back and just send the approval process forward and bring the setback process back to you guys to talk about.
Because I also comes into play with your worried about heights and stuff, is the height of the boat when it's on a lift, which has been re-brought up by the commission recently. And if you're talking about that, then it should be a whole grouping
We
thing.
didn't discuss
And you should
height,
finally
right.
bring up something about, which is not in the code, about is a blocking of a visual blocking of somebody's view being a problem. You know,
What if we, since it's going to the commission for final approval anyway, what if we break it down like we make a motion that will approve the processed parts, but as to the setback, we are sending this to the commission undecided by us?
I think that
Is that-
splitting the ordinance and
Is-
then bringing the setback back to the planning board for discussion.
Okay.
Because the
You think-
planning board
okay.
really should give a recommendation
Yeah.
to the commission
Yeah, no,
on
Okay.
changing things.
I agree.
So we
Okay.
could split it out, just send everything that the approval
that makes
process to
sense.
the commission.
Town attorney?
I
Yeah,
was just going to say that.
That makes
What you would
sense.
do is you'd recommend
Yeah.
removing that, and then it would come back as a separate.
right, okay, then that's what I recommend.
Okay.
Any other public comments on this? Yeah, Doug, since we're really getting involved.
Hi, Doug Hillman. Excellent idea, by the way, to split this.
Yeah.
I would urge the board to go to some of the homes that are on the canal, take a look at this, because you're cutting 25% out. Maybe it should be a 5-foot, not a 10-foot. 10-foot on either side takes 20 feet out of 80 feet. That's a whole lot. It also takes it out of the other side, so now you've got a 20-foot gap, which is nice to have more space to view, but what does that do to the whole picture? The other thing is, I don't know if there are any boaters on the board here, are there?
No.
Okay, so is it now a 50-foot boat on the water line, or is it bow to stern? So you got to be careful on how you define it. If you go bow to stern, your water line might be as low as 42 feet. So be careful on the definition side as well, okay? But I urge the group to go to the canals, take a look at this, see if in fact you want to do the 10-foot. You know, you might want to reduce it, you might want to expand it, I don't know. But go take a look at the subject so you know specifically what you're looking at and what you're talking about, okay? Thanks.
So, okay. Are we going to make some motions
Yeah,
here?
so I make a motion that we split this ordinance, this proposed change, that we, the commission, the planning board, approve the change in the process so that the planning board is the final say as it's set forth in the proposal, and that we delete the part that has to do with the change in the code of 10-foot setbacks for boats. Does that work?
Is that okay?
I'll second that.
Any other comments? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Member Mendelson?
Yes.
Member Goldenberg?
Yes.
Member DeMoss?
Yes.
Member Adwar?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Kravitz,
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, 9C, application number 190003, John Dykinka, Ocean One Marine. Application by John Dykinka, and excuse me if I pronounced it incorrectly, Ocean One Marine for approval to extend a 19.8 dock by 19 feet 8-inch dock by 14 feet 55 inch for a total of 34 feet 35 inches, and install 2 20,000-pound boat lifts on dock number 5 in the Villa Magna development located at 2727 South Ocean Boulevard. Mary?
Okay, this is a request by John Daikinga. Where are you? Of Ocean One Marine, and he represents Joseph Galito and David Bretman for approval of a 14.55-foot-long by 5 feet wide extension to slip number 5. If I can get a picture up. Okay, nope. I don't know if something's wrong with this.
Like-
Okay, thanks.
Up here, then the plan. Don't worry about it.
This is the location, and this is how the proposed boat lifts would be set up. So this was the extension to the dock, an extension, that's slip number 5, and a 20,000-pound capacity boat lift in slip 5A, and a 20,000-pound capacity boat lift in slip 5B, and that's within the Villa Magna condominium development at 2727 South Ocean Boulevard. The slips are located on the west side of State Road A1A. The applicant has obtained both Army Corps and DEP permits. They also have obtained approval by the Villa Magna Association. And the requirement of the code, section 30-68H, is in order to be installed, dolphins, freestanding pilings, boat lifts, and moorings shall comply with the standards of the code, that is, the installation shall be subject to approval by the planning board at an advertised public hearing, which this is. And the planning board shall have final decision-making authority over the granting of an approval for dolphins, freestanding pilings, boat lifts, and moorings. Appeals of the final decision of the planning board shall be filed in the 15th Circuit Court in Palm Beach County, and appeals shall be filed within 30 calendar days of the decision. Staff reviewed the application and plans and finds that the project meets the town's code. And following approval by the planning board, prior to initiation of construction, the applicant will be required to obtain a building permit from the Town of Highland Beach Building Department. Construction must be completed within 2 years of planning board approval. And we found that it meets all of these requirements, and we recommend approval.
Okay. I'd like to make one little typographical
Okay,
change
sure.
there, because in the recommendation written, it calls for a dock at 15 Ocean Cove in the
right.
recommendation, so can we change
Typo.
that to where we're supposed
Excuse
to
me
be?
for that.
Okay. Does anybody on the board have any ex parte communications to disclose?
No.
Good, okay. Does the board have any questions for the staff at this time? One question I have is, this is 5, and this is right along the, the Intercoastal, and you can see it
Yes.
as you walk by. There's been a lot of improvements done to it. My question is in doing this, is there a owner of number 4 and number 6? And is there any problems with possibly occurring there?
Well, we notified the association, who is supposed to notify all of the
Okay.
property owners. We haven't received any comments for or against it.
Okay, all righty. Does anybody else on the board have any questions for Mary? At this time, we'll open that to the public. Mr. Dinger, do you want to make any statements?
I really don't have anything to add unless someone has a question.
Okay, basically, come up for a second. My only question is, as I said, I walk in the morning up and down there, and there's been a lot of work done. Is that one specifically wider than the other one, the other docking spaces? How does that work? on that?
Currently, when I guess the condominium redid that marina portion of the
Right.
thing, for some reason, I guess they stayed with whatever was there existing, and for some reason, this is the shortest finger in the place. So why, who knows what happened, but to really accommodate the vessels that will typically dock in there now, that one needs to be extended out. And the Corps and everybody had no problem
Okay.
in approving it, so.
And again, as long as the Armed Forces, the Corps of Engineers approved it, and you can go out, you know, that's okay.
Yes.
And there's no, and it does not interfere with, in the U of the different piers, it doesn't extend past their percentage of ownership. So I think it's pretty straightforward approval.
Is there anybody from the public who'd like to make any comments? Oh, good, they went along, okay. The board, and is there any other comments to be made? Okay, the public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion to approve, a motion to approve with conditions, or a motion to deny the request?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call?
Vice Chairperson Kravitz,
Yes.
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Member DeMoss.
Yes.
Member Goldenberg.
Yes.
Member Adwar,
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
9D, application number 19-004, Josh Curry, Ocean Blue Custom Homes. Application by Josh Curry of Ocean Blue Custom Homes representing Gestion Eric Bernier for approval of an approximately 6,000 square foot house on an 11,504 square foot lot located at 4205 Intracostal Drive. Do the board members have any extra parte communications? Okay, at this time, I now open the public hearing. Mary, go to
Okay.
it.
And this is an application for approval of a 6,000 square foot house on an 11,504 square foot lot at 4205 Intercoastal Drive in the Bell Lido subdivision. So the applicant is not proposing to obtain approval for any marine facilities such as a dock, seawall, or seawall cap at this time. Future approval for any of these marine facilities will have to be a separate application submitted to the town and be reviewed by the planning board. Staff has reviewed the plans and found the plans comply with the town's code of ordinances, and we recommend approval, subject to following approval by the planning board, and prior to initiation of construction, the applicant will be required to obtain a building permit from the Town of Highland Beach Building Department, and construction must be substantially completed within 2 years of planning board approval. I don't have any more presentation on this. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Seems like it's the same architect that we've seen on several other homes. Beautiful home.
It's nice looking.
It's going to add a little pizzazz to Bell Lido, I think.
Are all the setbacks okay? My
Yes.
only concern is that the pool deck seemed to go all the way out.
We've
And I think
measured-
it's supposed to be a 4-foot
We measured
setback.
every setback.
Okay, you did measure, okay, so
Yep.
that's fine. Anybody else have any comments?
Just one thing.
Question? Yeah.
The dock isn't part of this
No.
application,
No.
right?
No.
So they'll have to come in with a separate.
Separate dock, seawall, et cetera.
Right.
Okay. Is there anybody from the public who wants, in fact, is there anybody from the owner here who wants to make any comments? Nobody wants to make comments? Okay, this is good. If there's no other comments, the public hearing is closed. I will entertain a motion on the subject.
I move we accept the plans as stated or drawn.
I'll second.
Call the roll, please.
Member DeMoss,
Yes.
Member Goldenberg.
Yes.
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Member Adwar,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Kravitz.
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod. Chairperson
Yes,
Axel.
yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, last but not least, application number 9006 and 9007, Jeffrey Norman and Stuart Olston. Application by Jeffrey Norman representing Stuart Olston for approval of a new 150 square foot marginal dock, installation of a new seawall and seawall cap, and installation of a new batter piles at 2352 South Ocean Boulevard. Do any members of the board have any ex parte communications to disclose? Not hearing any, I now open the public hearing. Mary?
Yes, this is an application by Jeffrey Norman, representing Stuart Olston, for approval of a new 150-square-foot dock, a new seawall and seawall cap, and installation of new batter piles at 2352 South Ocean Boulevard.
Okay,
The applicant is proposing to replace an existing 80 linear foot concrete seawall, install a new 60-inch concrete seawall cap, install 9 12-inch concrete king piles and 9 12-inch concrete batter piles adjacent to the proposed seawall. Remove the existing 155-square-foot wooden dock and remove 2 existing mooring piles. Construct a new 7-foot wide by 30-foot long concrete marginal dock measured from the wet face of the proposed seawall. And the applicant has obtained both Army Corps and DEP permits, and we've included the section of the code from 6-128, which says that all seawalls and retaining walls have to be reviewed by the planning board. Well, they have to go to the town commission for approval. And the proposed seawall must be reviewed town commission after notification of property owners within 1,000 feet, and property owners within 1,000 feet have been notified by the town of both the December 12th planning board meeting and the January 7th town commission meeting. And per section 30-68G6, marine facilities shall comply with standards listed below. A, in waterways not regulated by the U.S. Army Corps, docks and mooring structures shall not extend into any waterway more than 5 feet. In waterways regulated by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, which this is, docks and mooring structures may extend to that distance allowed by said agency.
Does the board have any questions for the staff? Oh, I'm
Want me to
sorry, you
finish?
can't?
Okay, I was just.
I'm sorry. You paused.
Measurement of the width or length of a dock shall be made from the property line. The 7-foot width of the dock has been permitted by the Army Corps. And in single-family zoning districts, side yard setbacks, 25 feet for the dock, provided, however, the side yard setback shall be 15 feet for any single-family lot, a width of 50 feet, which is not this one. The dock meets the single-family zoning district's requirements, and then the installation shall be subject to approval by the planning board and advertised public hearing, which this one is, and the planning board shall have final decision-making authority, and staff reviewed the application and finds the project meets the town's code. And following approval by the planning board and the town commission for the seawall, and prior to installation of construction, the applicant shall be required to obtain a building permit from the town, and construction must be completed within 2 years of planning board approval. And they meet all of the town's code and zoning regulations.
Does the board have any questions for Mary? Eileen?
Okay, is this the vacant property or the one with the new house?
This is the one with new house under
With the new house,
construction.
okay, so the, out back, there's a ugly dock and
Yes.
needed, so, okay, got it.
Any other questions for Mary? Does the applicant want to make a presentation of any sort? The applicant here? No? Okay. Town staff have any questions for the applicant? One question, how high is the seawall?
Existing or proposed?
Proposed.
He has to come up. Dave.
Oh, I'm sorry, come up.
Yeah, next question. Sorry.
Hopefully, it's going to be higher than the current code.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like
It's
to
higher
hear.
than what's existing, absolutely.
That's what I'd like to hear.
Right, we're bringing up the whole property.
Is that how the cap's for?
Right.
Because I know, for example, some towns adjacent to us putting into certain motions, raising their requirements and stuff like that.
Right, we're raising it a couple of feet. Exactly, NAVD, I'm not sure. Joe, do you know what it is?
I'm sorry.
Excuse me. For the record, can you please state your name?
Jeff Norman.
Thank you.
Joe Gilio, CTEC Construction.
Do you know where it is on?
I believe it's 2 feet.
It appears from the drawing, if I may, that you're going from 7 to 9 feet.
Oh, that's, okay.
It's coming up to 2 feet.
Thank you, Michael.
Next episode.
We just got the answer.
6.2 NAVD.
6.2 NAVD, which is 2 feet higher.
Hey, I spent 5 years in architecture school.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Get an outlook. Really minor.
All right. Are there any, thank you. Are there any other questions for anybody? And the public hearing is now closed. Is there a motion to approve with this, approve or any with conditions?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call. I'll put Michael down. Yeah.
Either one.
Either one.
It's his last meeting.
Yeah.
Member Mendelson?
Yes.
Member DeMoss?
Yes.
Member Goldenberg?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Kravitz?
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Member Goldenberg?
I did it again.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Motion carries.
Let me get back to my things here. You have any more? Is
There's
that
one
it?
more.
D?
F.
What?
F.
F. Oh, E, F. Let's see, where is F? Yeah. F? Here we go. Wait a second. F, okay.
What about E?
Sorry,
There's 7.
we just did that.
07. It's 2 parts.
Is it part 2 of this?
Yeah, this is part 2.
Yes.
Oh, very complicated. Okay, part 2, application by Jeffrey Norman representing Stuart Olston for approval of revised approved site plan, for 7,122 square foot single-family home. They add a new pool and pool deck at 2352 South Ocean Boulevard. Any ex parte communications? I'll now open the public hearing. Mary?
Right, the applicant's proposing to add a pool deck, and spa to the previously approved site plan, which happened in August 2018. That included a 7,122 square foot house on an 18,760 square foot lot. The lot is on the west side of State Road A1A, and the amendment to the plan is considered a major modification, which is section 30-39 of the code, and major modifications that alter existing principal or accessory structures, including but not limited to the building footprint, number of square feet, building height, number of dwelling units, parking requirements, change in exterior facade, change of use, change of roof line, change of elevation, all exterior walls, balconies, foundations, accessory structures, and similar substantial improvements as determined by the building official. We determined that, of course, adding a pool that wasn't approved on the previous plan was a modification to the plan that was approved. The swimming pool meets the required setbacks, and the deck meets the required setbacks. Alternate setbacks and clearance for pools or decks are permitted, subject to approval of the building official and the planning board, which there are no alternate setbacks that are being requested. Following approval by the planning board, the applicant is required to obtain a building permit from the town of Highland Beach prior to construction, and we recommend approval of the revised site plan for 2352 South Ocean Boulevard to add a pool deck, and spa. Available for questions.
Any questions for
Yes.
Mary? Michael?
On the site plan, on the south property line, I believe just outside the deck and the door there, there's a small retaining wall. You can see it on the left side of your plan. That
Is
cut
it on
off-
that plan?
That cut off part of it. But my question is, it appears
Sure.
that the fence along that property line stops about 20 feet or so prior to the gate, providing access to the backyard. Also, it doesn't appear that the pole fence extends out past the edge of the dock or the seawall. It could just be a graphical error on the drawing, but if we're approving the site plan change, I think those should be looked into.
Mr. Norman, you want to address that? The fence?
Yeah.
So the question was if the fence goes out beyond the seawall waterward?
Or at least to where it's, on the rear of the property as to where it's supposed to terminate, as well as along the south property line, where it looks like there's a small retaining wall that was put there, but yet there's no fence. I don't know how high that retaining wall is.
The retaining wall is 2 feet or 1.5 feet above grade, and then above that will go a fence that will
Okay.
be 4 foot high.
All right, so on your, because on your drawing, on your site plan drawing, it doesn't show that, so the fence stops where the retaining wall starts.
Yeah, there's an existing 6-foot-high wall there that we kept, and then westward of that would be the retaining wall and the fence, so we would note it to the plan.
Michael? Yeah, anything follow?
That was the only comment I had.
Okay. Are there any other, as long as the applicant is up here, is there any other comments or questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Since there's no further testimony, the public hearing is now closed. And is there a motion to approve?
I move
Disapprove
that we approve the pool.
Okay, second?
I'll second it.
Discussion?
Roll call?
Discussion?
Oh, discussion? Is
Yeah,
there
I'd like to
discussion?
just
Okay.
have the motion modified
Oh,
to
okay,
ensure
sorry.
that the proper height and configuration of the fence is installed for safety purposes to meet code.
Right, it's, yeah, it would be caught at building permitting because required by code, but that's fine.
Okay. Any comments from public? No? Okay, motion to approve, we have a motion on the floor to approve. Do I have a roll call?
Motion is amended.
What?
Motion is amended.
Amended is on
I'm
the
sorry.
floor.
Okay.
Member DeMoss?
Yes.
Member Adwar?
Yes.
Member Mendelsohn?
Yes.
Member Goldenberg?
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Kravitz,
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod?
Yes.
Motion carries.
9F, application number 19-0699, Mark Huntley, Charette International. Application by Mark Huntley of Charette International Architecture for approval to renovate a 4-unit building to a 3-unit building located at 4200 South Ocean Boulevard. Do any board members have any ex parte communications to disclose? Then I open the public hearing. Mary, last but not least, go ahead.
The applicant is proposing to modify an existing building that has 4 units, 2 on the first floor and 2 on the second floor, by combining the 2 units on the second floor into 1 unit. The total square footage of the building will remain at 2,879 square feet. In addition to the above, the applicant plans to replace windows on the ground floor units to impact-resistant windows, remove the roof and raise the tie beam by 4 feet, and then reinstall the roof to raise the ceiling heights on the second floor, renovate the current common core to provide access and an internal stairwell to the second floor, extend the rear first floor and second floor patio and balcony, and add a small storage shed to the north side of the building. The existing pool parking and yard area will not be affected, and the exterior envelope will not be extended toward the property line. The lot is on the west side of State Road A1A, and the amendment is considered a major modification per section -30-39 of our code. And the plans have been reviewed by the town planner for setback compliance and found to meet the town's setback code. And then following approval by the planning board, the applicant's required to obtain a building permit from the town of Highland Beach prior to construction. And staff recommends approval of the resite plan for 4200 South Ocean Boulevard. And the applicant is also here today in case you have any questions for them.
Does the board have any questions first for staff?
Okay. So you said that you looked for the setbacks?
Yes.
You said that they're going to raise the roof to accommodate a higher ceiling on the second
Yes.
floor? Is that still within the height
Yes, it is.
restrictions? Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other questions for Mary?
Mary, and maybe we can ask the applicant too, is the parking area, is that going to be improved upon at all?
So, to my knowledge, there's no change to that, but I'll let them address that.
Okay, applicant.
Good morning. My name's Mark Henley. I'm an architect and one of the partners at Charette Architecture. My partner, Paul Charette, is also here, as well as the owners of the property. No, not in our scope as far as improving the parking goes, because parking requirements would require 2 parking spaces per unit. There's currently 6 spaces, and we're turning this into a 3 unit, so we're actually going into conformance as far as parking.
The only reason I bring that up is particularly after rains, that is the worst building on A1A as far as holding water. And I would strongly suggest that it be addressed.
Michael?
Yeah, on the site plan, I do see the 3 parking spaces, and then there's 2 asphalt areas that are just to the west of the last 2 parking spaces. And they appear to be somewhat shallower than the parking space width. I don't know what those areas are. Also, it appears that the asphalt for the existing parking lot is extending right to the A1A, the A1A property line. I don't know if that's conforming or non-conforming. Due to the size of the alteration and the renovation, I would also recommend that the entire site be re-landscaped to current codes, as well as the parking lot be milled and paved and brought up for proper elevation for drainage.
Okay, we will make sure that is addressed. We will have a landscape plan for it, and we will make sure that the drainage is taken.
Okay, and that needs to come back before this board as well.
The way you're going to do that.
Okay.
The outbuilding, the accessory building, the shed or whatever you called it, that's also conforming with the zoning ordinance.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board for the applicant? Okay. Are there any comments by the public regarding this? Okay.
Michael, I think you should frame the motion.
Sure.
We don't have a motion yet, so.
No, I know, when we do.
Oh, okay. Public hearing is now closed. Eileen, go right ahead.
Yeah, no, I think that Michael should frame
Oh, okay.
any motion because of the way that should be.
So I'd like to make a motion to approve the application with conditions, and the conditions be that, number 1, the site landscaping is brought up to current code, the grades and elevations are corrected to current code if deficient, to employ proper drainage, and that the parking configuration be adjusted as necessary to also meet current zoning ordinances and codes.
I second that.
Discussion?
Yeah, I would just say that, so that procedurally, and maybe the town attorney can weigh in, we're approving it with these conditions, and so does it not start until they've given us the information on these conditions,
Well-
or can they start? I mean, I just want to know procedurally.
Yeah,
how
no,
it
and
works.
that's really up to you. Do you want it to come back to review the landscape plan, or you just
Yeah, I'm
want it to
sorry,
be
so,
compliant?
yeah, I'm sorry, so to amend the motion then, it would be to require that the plan come back to us, so therefore, final approval.
So you're approving the structure, but you want the landscape plan and
the site plan to
the
come back.
paving, drainage, and the site plan to come back for subsequent review and approval.
So it's like a
Correct.
preliminary approval until the rest of that is.
Or you can, I don't know, if you want to continue it. Is it advertised, Mary?
Yeah, it's advertised, but we could bring it back, and you could either table it
They
to the
could
next meeting,
continue
and
it
then we don't
and not have to re-advertise.
Right,
So
then
if
we
you
won't.
continue to a date certain, they don't have
Table
to
it to the
re-advertise.
next meeting, and we'll just bring it all back.
Yeah, so we'll modify the motion to table the approval,
Or continue.
subject to the required information being brought back before this board.
And what's the date of the next meeting?
Thank you. It's the second Thursday of January.
Yes, they're all the second Thursday.
Anyone have
Somebody
that
with a
date?
calendar has to look at it.
January
I
9th?
believe it's January 9th.
All
at
right,
least
so
on
so
my
the
sheet.
motion is,
You're right.
we're going to continue it to January 9th. That way we won't have to re-advertise it.
Yes.
Any other comments from the board?
Do we have a second to that motion to continue? Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Well, so the motion is to continue now.
Okay, motion is to table until
To the next
meeting.
To the January meeting.
Okay. Call the roll on that?
Vice Chairperson Kravitz,
Yes.
Member Adwar,
Yes.
Member Mendelson,
Yes.
Member DeMoss.
Yes.
Member Goldenberg.
Yes.
Chairperson Axelrod.
Yes,
Motion carries.
right, absolutely. Announcements.
Okay, there is only one. Town Commission regular meeting, December 17th, 2019, at 1:30 PM.
And I also have one announcement. I want to thank Michael Kravitz for his years of expertise that he has brought to the board, and as also as my vice chairman in my absence. Want to thank you, Michael. Best of
Thank you,
luck in the
Michael.
future.
Thank you.
And on that
It's
basis,
been an honor and a pleasure.
okay, on that basis, with a Merry Christmas and a Happy Hanukkah, I announce adjournment. There need no further business to come before the board. I'll need a motion for adjourning at 10:53.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That's not too bad. Merry Christmas. He said, that's a Merry Christmas.
No, he said
I
both.
said Merry Christmas.
Stuff you had.
Hey, but David, you forgot Happy New Year.
And happy.
I wish people Happy New Year would come back on the 9th.
On the ninth?
That's our next meeting. So you know, next meeting is May.
Email here.
Oh, no, we'll miss you. Good luck. Future endeavors.
I understand that basically said that.
All right, later.
Idea of it is that we responded to him.